Nick's comments were very interesting because frequently on this panel we have talked about this sort of like, how do you reconcile the enthusiasm of the support for the Conservatives with these top-line numbers in the aggregate and polling? And his point was very much that you can, because this is record-breaking support for the Conservatives. It's just this so unique situation where the Bloc and the NDP's support has eviscerated to the, you know, to the advantage of the Liberals.
And I would even add the Greens. I mean, when you're at 1.3%, you know, you're within the margin of error of 0. So it's no fun. And what we've talked about for a while is the fact that this is boiled down to a two-horse race. It's the Liberals, you know, 5-6 points ahead, depending on the day in the polling, and the Conservatives with a number that in any other election is much higher than anything Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole got, but it's not going to be enough. And not only is the raw sticking with the same image horse race number, you know, not in favor of the Conservatives. The Liberals have that 5-point lead. But beyond that, it's the question you asked, Nanos, at the end, Vashi, about the efficiency of the Liberal vote, because their vote is better spread out. That's the simplest way of saying it. They'll win pretty well all the seats in the GTA by 1 or 2 or 3,000 votes. Yes, the Conservatives will win tons of seats in Alberta and Saskatchewan by 10, 15, 20,000 votes. But it's, you know what, a seat's a seat. And this system is based on seats. And that's why the Conservatives got more votes than the Libs in both 2019 and 21 with Scheer and O'Toole, respectively. But the Liberals formed a minority government. That and the fact that the potential voting pool, those people who would be willing to vote Liberal if their candidate has no chance, is much larger, because I don't know too many Greens who would be thinking of voting for Mr. Poilievre, and very few NDPers. There might be some, you know, in the Labour movement who would go that way, but overall, any of those changes would be more likely to go to the Liberals. So it's that larger pool, it's that universe of potential voters, I think, that tips the whole thing in favor of a Liberal government. And again, we're a couple of weeks out. I like reminding people that the Orange Wave that Jack and I rode to 59 seats in Quebec really only formed in the last couple of weeks of that election back in 2011. So there's still lots of politics left between now and the final vote count.
I think one of the striking things, as Tom mentions, James, is the level of, or lack thereof, of support for example, you know, the NDP in particular, but even the Bloc to a certain degree, and definitely the Greens. What do you think it is about this election that has, you know, caused, at this moment in the election, I should say, so many Canadians turn away from those parties as options, as viable options?
Well, I think Canadians are smart, and they know what's in front of them, and they know that, look, through the sweep of Canadian history, about 1 in 3 elections yields a minority parliament. We've now had 2 in a row. And I think people recognize that among the reasons why Donald Trump is able to yield the belligerent power that he's yielding, not only against Canada, but against the world, is because he has the Congress, he has the Senate, he has the White House, he won the Electoral College, he won the plurality of the popular vote, he's stacked the courts, and he has all this momentum behind him. Well, I think that requires Canada to have a government that is a majority government that has a firm mandate of clarity and purpose around a prime minister who can push back and do so firmly. And so right out of the gate, I think Canadians know that that's the formula. Maybe they don't articulate it how I just did, but I think Canadians have an instinct that there are moments where you need a majority government to have that firmness of a mandate, to make quick decisions, to protect industries that are in trouble, to help Canadians who might be suffering, or frankly, to reach an arrangement with the Americans in the USMCA environment that could be accretive to the Canadian economy. But the ability to move quickly and responsibly in defense of Canada. So then the question comes down very quickly is, who do you want to be your prime minister, Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney? And that's what we're going to see showcased in the 2 leaders debates, of which of these 2 people do you want to look at on your phone or on your television every day for the next 4 years in the back and forth with the president of the United States. And you know, I think Pierre Poilievre has a strong, I mean, the message, the clip that you showed there, right, which is, you know, 10 lost years, we really want to do that. And I think that pivoting out of the debates, the hope is that over the 4-day weekend from Good Friday through to Easter, is that a lot of couples will look at each other and they say, you know, it's been 10 years, it's kind of been lost. I think Poilievre's a good guy. I think he's ready. I think he's a good guy, and I think he's ready. Basically the same math that Canadians offered to Justin Trudeau in 2015 of, I think he's ready, I think he's up for the job. And I think Pierre Poilievre will try to close that case in the debates, and I think he's got a strong case to make.
Do you think, Brian, that ultimately that is the way that Canadians are viewing it, very much focused on the 2 individuals and their, you know, the possibility of what they will be like as prime minister up against Trump or up against any economic challenge we face?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors at play. James's point, I think, is a really interesting one to frame the psyche of Canadians, and frankly, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the idea that there's a crisis, there's a perception of crisis, whether it's about sovereignty or whether it's about our economic future and our most important and significant trading relationship. There's definitely, I think, a tendency when there is a crisis to rally behind your government. Now, this is an interesting time because it's been 10 years of a government that there's no question was sort of feeling like it was near the end. And then all of a sudden you have a new leader and new circumstances. And again, I think some rallied behind the government, but there's still a very passionate group that would want change. And I think that also goes to what Nick Nanos was explaining in terms of support. There are not only a lot of people still supporting the Conservatives more than usual, I think a lot of them are very passionate. And I think especially if you go out west, probably even more so. With that, I do think the other factor that's at play is the idea that the NDP has propped up the Liberal government. There's so much that has happened over the last sort of few months, but we kind of forgot that part. And history shows us when a third, so-called third party props up a government, usually they have a tough time in the next election. I mean, that's just, it's very rare that that's not the case, right? So history seems to be repeating itself in that way as well. It's not the only force at play here, but I certainly think that's one as well. And then the Bloc, I'm not going to profess to know the intimacies of Quebec politics. We all sort of watch it and try to figure it out. But I also think the Bloc over the years has been a sort of party when people aren't sure they want the Liberals or Conservatives, they sort of park their vote there. Given the circumstances that everyone has talked about on the panel so far, I think people are like, nah, we can't park our vote this time around. We really need to make a choice between the two parties that traditionally have governed.
Yeah, it feels very much like it circles back, Rob, to kind of what Tom wrote near the outset of this election, which obviously, as Tom will acknowledge, got some pushback from current sitting members of the NDP. But at the same time, ultimately, it feels like Canadians are very focused on who will form government in the choices that exist for that.
Yeah, and as Tom made that point in his piece early on in the campaign, it's a two-horse race because only two men, both representing Ottawa area ridings, both originally from Alberta, and both sons of teachers, can be prime minister, and these are serious circumstances that we're in, Vashi, and I think that's the sense that we're all seeing. That's what Nick Nanos is showing in his polls. I feel for the Conservative campaign. If you told them, 6 months ago you'll be at almost 40% going into the debates, they would have think, well, we're going to romp to victory. The problem is the New Democrats, the Greens, and the PPC and the Bloc have just basically vanished. So it's an extraordinary outcome, or poised to be an extraordinary outcome when you have you could have a losing party. The leader could lose his own seat potentially, and could lose his job even if he does win his seat, and yet finish with a greater percentage of the popular vote than Stephen Harper did in two of his elections.